We are officially live at the Beaurepaires Tasmania SuperSprint. We're about to try something we've never tried before. We're going to go out on the track walk. Hopefully you can hear us loud and clear. I've got the perfect guy to come for the ride.
Hi.
Good afternoon, Garth.
Yes, hello, Chad.
Important part of the day. Everyone's walking the track. We're going to find out what they're looking for. Have you found us a cool ride for the day?
I have, well, it's a ride. I don't know if it's cool. It's something different. I've never done a track walk in something like this before.
Because Garth refused to walk.
No, I don't do walking anymore.
2.4 Ks of Symmons Plains. So let's hop in the Gator, the official Supercars Gator. We're going to go for a lap of this amazing Symmons Plains circuit, historic, glorious Symmons Plains. We might find one or two drivers as we get out there. And Garth, why don't we pull up at a few spots and we'll find out the keys to getting around this amazing racetrack.
Leaving pit lane.
Well, we didn't break the speed limit in pit lane, I know that much.
I don't think we're going to break the speed limit.
All right, let's head up towards turn one. So, coming out of pit exit, first of all, any keys to getting out of pit exit? It's a bit of a tricky rejoin.
It is, it's a very tricky rejoin, and the first thing you'll see up here on the apex of pit exit is this tyre bundle. So I'm going to go really close to this tyre bundle because that's what you've got to do. You've got to go that tyre bundle and over that curb. And then you're right, it is a tricky rejoin here because the cars actually coming out of pit lane in the race have right of way.
Okay.
So the cars on the racetrack at the apex of turn two have to pull the car tight effectively. So the race cars will come through here, turn two, and they actually have to pull the car tight because if they see a car coming out of pit lane, it's got the right of way. And it gets quite tricky when you run up through turns three and under the bridge there because the car leaving pit lane is actually faster than the car on the track because it actually picks up speed quicker, but they're on cold tyres. So going too wide under the Dunlop Bridge, especially with the pit lane exit car on cold tyres, is actually quite tricky.
I like that. Turn one, lap one, as we come in through here, we've seen some famous incidents. Brad Lowndes and Dave Reynolds comes to mind. Do you expect to see some drama down here this weekend?
Yes. You generally, it's a really tricky, difficult start to the race because you look back at turn one itself over that hump. Even from the start, like you pull second gear, if you're on the front row, you're pulling second gear. If you're fit further back, pulling third and fourth gear. Cars get quite light and quite taily. And then you've got to stop and pull it up before you get to turn two itself. Used to be worse. They used to have a tyre bundle here. Now they've got this big orange dome, which is a bit better. You can sort of straddle that if you need to. But yes, elbows get up pretty heavily here. And there is lots of bumping and grinding. We've seen, obviously, plenty of action at the start. Now, I'm trying not to grind the gears.
Are you sure you can handle this amount of horsepower?
All right, you ready? We're
off.
There
we go. Rebecca, run running. All right. We've got 1,000 people watching us live on our...
I've got to take the handbrake off. It goes
I wouldn't call it a track walk. Oh, he's left the handbrake on like the Toyota 86 race at Phillip Island a few years ago.
Habits with that.
You knew I was going to mention that. If you've got a question for us, I'm going to try and throw some at Garth as he takes me for a hot lap of Symmons Plains. Talk us through turn three.
Turn three normally is flat. Once the tyre's up to temperature. The cars do get a little bit taily on the exit here, and you can see the boys rigging up a camera here because the cars run very, very close to this wall and often can bump this wall. So that's why they put a camera there because it looks really cool.
Sense.
So you can see the camera there.
There's a hard-working Supercars media crew putting up the wall cameras for the weekend.
So normally we're right over here.
Yep. Obviously the side of where it all went horribly wrong. I think you're revisiting that this weekend in the broadcast.
Yeah, we have. We've done a story for that. I was in the middle of that one. One of the biggest crashes we've seen in recent Supercars history. Over half the field involved with that. So it actually started on the exit of turn three and didn't finish for about 400 or 500 metres. It took forever for that crash to finish. It was like, you know, what was it? Talladega night? When the crash that takes like, they go to the break through the crash. It was like that. It felt like that.
We haven't seen any teams walking it. I think most of the crews were heading out at 3 o'clock today, so we might be a touch early for the track walk today. We'll go past a couple of camera stands up towards turn four. Good to see some fans back this weekend as well.
Oh, yeah, it'd be cool. And look, 2 years since we've been to Symmons Plains, over 2 years. So awesome to be back here. I know all the locals are really, really excited about having Supercars back in Tasmania, and Supercars certainly very excited to be back here.
Here's one from Darren who says, what is the rough elevation change coming out of the hairpin? As I look from here, I can't actually see the road, so that's a pretty good question.
Let's go over. We'll jump out. We'll go up to the 100-metre board.
Here we go. Where do you brake?
You brake about 100, and depending on the wind, actually.
Okay.
Tailwind, you brake about 150.
Right.
Headwind, you brake about... Take her out of gear.
Nice. Pull the handbrake on.
Turn it off. Save fuel. Headwind, you brake about 120. So very wind dependent. So at the moment, we've got a slight tailwind. So probably around the 140, 150 metre mark.
Alrighty.
And then, yeah, here you can actually... We'll go down the hairpin a bit further, but you can actually, if you just look over the guardrail here, you can see how much further down it is to the exit.
It really doesn't do it justice, but that's a good
Oh, it'd be 20 metres.
You reckon?
Yeah. 15, 20 metres, I reckon.
Okay. I was going to say about 6 foot, but that shows what I know.
No, I'm 6 foot, Chad. It's way more than that.
If you were to stand down there, you'd be about this height, sure.
No. See, you short guys, you don't understand.
We don't have much of an idea on elevation change.
Exactly.
That's why you're so good around Bathurst, because you're so tall. Here's one from John Garth. Whose fault was that big crash?
Oh, look, it was 4 years ago. There was actually There were two incidents that really were involved there. There was the first one where Rick Kelly and Fabian Coulthard. Fabian ran wide and sort of squeezed Rick into the fence, and that slowed everyone up. Rick had damage.
Yep.
Then I think Tim Slade got involved in that, and then we ended up sort of 3 wide, and it's so narrow down here, and you couldn't see because of the spray, and it was actually spray, but then the sun was shining through the spray, so you couldn't see. And then I think Fab sort of came back, squeezed Cam Waters, and that actually then Cam got squeezed into me. I was trying to sneak around the outside of it, and then I got turned around into Rick, and then it was stacks on.
So hard to say.
Oh, look, I think at the time Fab's actually got a penalty, a points penalty, but that was more to do with putting Rick into the barrier, not the massive crash that we saw. The massive crash that we saw afterwards was just everyone running out of room and everyone trying to get on with it and take advantage. So not really anyone's fault. The big one, it's just one of those things. And like 4 years ago, like everyone's moved on.
This is cool. I've never actually been down here. So this is the first time I've stood on, probably, would you say this is the most famous hairpin in the country?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, when you say, you talk about the hairpin, everyone generally thinks about Symmons Plains. It's the slowest corner we go to, 60k an hour, first gear. And there's a couple of options for driving through here. So you generally start very high.
Sort of where the Gator is.
We've got the Gator parked, yes.
Perfectly
done
on the racing
purpose. It's just a habit. You end up, when you go on a racetrack, you end up driving the racing lines. And in the old days, you used to actually drive the car further up. So you can see these 2 skid marks going up the hill here. So in the old days, with the solid rear diff, before Car of the Future, you used to drive the car right up the top of the hill here. And then you'd turn and you'd shoot it right down the bank, and you'd just clip that apex. We'd be very, very late. You'd clip it right down the bottom. But things have changed now. Since we've gone to Car of the Future and the soft tyre, you actually run the car, you start at the Gator, you actually run the car, like we call it the high line, and you run it through here. And you don't actually go anywhere near the apex down there. You run it right through here, and then you let the car open up, and then you actually run the outside wheels on that concrete banking over there. So it's actually changed quite a bit. And this corner, there's only 3 real corners at Symmons Plains. This corner's the most critical one for lap time. So you're only doing 60k an hour here. It's easy to get caught up with the whole, fast and bravado. We talk about the fast corners, turn 1 at Phillip Island, across the top of the mountain at Bathurst. But there's not a lot of lap time in those. The lap time's in the slow corners, and that's what's going to happen here this weekend. This
gives you a huge idea of what that elevation and change is actually like to the top. It's actually a lot bigger down here than I thought it was going to be in terms of space. I imagine that doesn't feel like that.
You try doing it with 24 other guys.
Yeah, exactly.
There's not a lot of room here.
I thought it'd be a lot more crammed down here, but it's actually quite a surprisingly wide bit of road.
It's pretty narrow. So, where the Gator's parked, that's the turn-in point. You imagine 2 supercars, that pretty much takes up the whole track. And often, late in the race, you get a lot of brake fade here. This is the toughest circuit we go to all year on brakes. And you get a lot of brake fade, particularly here at the hairpin, because you had a reasonable stop into turn 2. And then the brakes don't get much of a cool before you get to the hairpin here. So you get a lot of front brake fade, and often you'll lock rear brakes later in the race. And if someone's on the racing line in the Gator, and you're behind them, and you're getting all the hot air coming into your brake ducts, your front brakes will fade, rear brakes become more effective, they'll grab, start to lock the rears. And so many times you see cars just hitting the car in front. And it's not like the driver's made a mistake or they're doing it intentionally. It's just that the brake fade has caught them out. And we see that so many times. Make contact there, end up here in the beach. And then that's, often we see that's the cause of either a red flag in qualifying or a safety car in the race.
It's funny coming up close to this gravel trap, now that I've had a chance to see it, it doesn't look like a lot of the other gravel traps we go to around the country. It looks more like those arrestor beds you see when you're going through the Blue Mountains?
So
it feels just like that.
You asked what we look at when you go for a track walk, and you have a bit of a look at the track and all the rest of it. None of that really changes year on year. What you do is you come and actually spend a bit of time looking at this sort of stuff, looking at the gravel trap, and go, if I drop a wheel in this, how soft is it? How am I going to be able to drive through that? And it actually, to be honest, it feels pretty soft. If you drop a wheel in here, you're in trouble. So that sort of tells you then, okay, if I'm in trouble coming up to the hairpin here, I've got to get the thing stopped as much as I can and don't end up dropping a wheel at all in this gravel trap. And if you remember back, I think it was 2017, Cam Waters had an engine let go here.
Oh, yeah.
And Shane Van Gisbergen was leading the race. Got caught on the oil, looked like he had it all under control and was sort of just turning around in this part of the runoff area and got himself, just dropped a wheel, just had 3 wheels on the track, dropped 1 wheel into that corner, into the gravel, leading the race, couldn't get himself out. That was it, DNF, like 4 laps to go. So that's the sort of thing when you go on a track walk, you have a bit of a look around and you look at the curbs and you look at the gravel traps and you look at all these escape routes, if you like, that if something goes wrong, how can I get myself out of trouble? Because there's no point ending up here and going, oh, I'll just sort of, most gravel traps I can drive through, I'll just drive through it and get out. That's where you got to go and actually have a bit of a feel and see if it's going to be soft or not.
That's cool. That's really, really good insight. That's probably the longest segment I think anyone's ever done on the hairpin down here at Tassie. Let's get back in the car and we'll go for a bit of a cruise.
Jeez, we walked a long way. The Gator's
we have actually the Gator's all the way back there. The cruise is setting up. How are we doing? Supercars Media ready to go this weekend. You can catch all the action live on Fox Sports and KO, 9 a.m. tomorrow, I believe 9:45 a.m. Sunday. Highlights will be shown across the weekend, of course, on 7 as well. Big weekend of motorsport coming up. Looking forward to seeing how IndyCar goes, F1, of course, but really looking forward to Scotty in the IndyCars this week. So we go through the hairpin to change it back to selfie cam. So thank you for that.
I found out how to make it go fast.
You drive it down the hill.
Yeehaw.
All right, we're out of turn 4. Check this out. We are flying. Got the wind in our hair. Fastest part of the racetrack coming up as we go through turn 5.
Just have a look over the side there, Chad. You can see there's actually an earth bank, tyre-filled bank. And we get out of the hairpin, and you see a lot of side-by-side running down here. I'll slow down and actually we'll talk about it properly. And
this thing had a bit of head of steam up then. It's not bad.
I found the go-fast lever.
Yeah.
And so you see a lot of side-by-side, and that's what everyone's trying to do is they're side drafting. So
Right.
you're trying to get as close as you can. I'm trying to get my hands. You're trying to get as close as you can to the rear quarter panel of the car in front. So if you get a better run off the hairpin behind us, and you try and get to the rear quarter panel, and you can stay on the rear quarter panel so the leading car can't basically chop you off.
Yep.
So that what the driver in front tries to do is they try and chop you off so you don't get the side draft. So often you'll see a lot of contact, sort of front bumper to rear bumper, because everyone's fighting to get that little bit of track position. Because down here, if you can get to the rear quarter panel, then you'll start side drafting up the side of the car. And as long as you're side by side before you get to the turn 5 sweeper, which is full noise, flat out, you'll just drive around the outside of them, and then you've got the inside for the braking zone.
Ooh.
So although it's a pretty innocuous looking bit of straight road.
I thought we just cruised through here without much to talk about.
No, there is, you'll see this weekend, the side drafting of all the places, particularly if we have wind conditions like this. We're now headwind down into turn 6. So the side draft becomes even more important because you're driving into a headwind. So that becomes important. So often, and I've been involved in it too, where you're banging panels and you're trying to get your rear front bumper to the rear quarter panel so you can start that side draft, because it's worth 4, 5, 6, 7k an hour as you go down the straight here.
Okay, there you go.
We're off.
Woo! Saw somebody pop up and say, what's the weather forecast like this weekend? Much the same of this, I
Yeah,
think.
much like this.
Yeah.
It's very pleasant.
Don't mind this at all.
Yeah, it's very nice.
There we go, give you a look at the turn 5 sweeper. All right, cruising down towards turn 5. So what are we talking here, Garth? 5th gear by now?
So you just pull 6th gear just
Already?
as you're turning
Right,
in.
yep.
Yeah, very short diff ratio here actually. So
Right.
pull 6th gear, and then you full noise through the sweeper. Yeah, you can. I don't know if it picks it up on the camera, but it's fairly wavy, so the cars get a bit of a. They don't move around too much when you're by yourself, but if you end up too wide through here, cars move around so much. They end up pushing a fair bit of air, so they the buffeting from. You know, if you're the lead car and then a passing car takes over the air that's being pushed, the buffeting becomes quite big. So particularly through here, through this turn 5 sweeper, the cars move around quite a lot when you're side by side, because what you're doing is you're setting up a passing opportunity up into turn 6.
All right, cruising with Garth Tander live on Facebook, previewing this weekend's Beaurepaires Tasmania SuperSprint. We're on approach towards turn 6. You've talked us through the racecraft between 4 and 5. You've managed to just get your nose up the inside.
Yep.
How do you execute the pass down here?
Now, really, if you've got your nose and you're side by side through turn 5, then really it's just a simple braking manoeuvre. The car passing generally, it's got the inside position, and then it's just basically you brake when the outside car brakes, So it becomes a bit of chicken, effectively. So you're braking here, well, headwind today, so braking about the 150 metre board.
Okay.
And it's only back to third gear, so 6th gear back to third gear down here. So turn 6 is actually still a reasonable speed corner. But the car passing on the inside just doesn't brake till the outside car brakes. And then basically the outside car's got a decision to make. It's either I'm going to try and hang around the outside, and that's fraught with danger because the inside car's always going to run you out of road.
Yep.
Or you give up the pass, you let the pass happen and hope that you've sucked the inside car in enough so they run wide through the apex of turn 6, and you do the over and under trick and try and get back up the inside. So often what you'll do is you'll slow the car up a bit more, go back to 2nd gear, turn harder on the throttle and try and punch yourself into a little hole there so that then you're on the inside and then the passing car ends up on the outside for turn 7, and if they're on the outside of turn 7 then you've got it done.
Yeah, right.
You can't hang around the outside of turn 7.
How much of this racecraft do you talk on when you go on a track walk? Is it more just talking about the circuit and the nuances, or are you actually talking about positioning your car in the way that you're talking about it now?
No, you don't talk about the racecraft so much because
everyone knows it.
You sort of know all that. What you end up talking about generally with your engineer is, oh, okay, last time we were here the car was doing this, I need the car to do that for me more so then I can pass up the inside here at turn 6.
Right.
So that might mean we want more drive traction off the turn 4 hairpin so that I get a better run, I get better tog, a better chance of getting up the inside here into turn 6. And then you might talk about, oh, well, if the wind conditions like it is today, the car's going to behave this way. So you're generally talking more about car behaviour and what the car was doing last time you ran here, and what you would like the car to be able to do more of, or less of, depending on what sort of car balance you've got.
Makes sense. Well, I saw one of the comments pop up earlier, someone saying they should make Symmons Plains longer.
Nah.
I had a feeling you'd say that.
No, I think one of the cool things, I'll be careful I don't turn in on someone. One of the cool things about this place is it is short and it is so tight and so close. So qualifying, for example, it'll be less than a second between the 24 cars, probably 8/10 of a second to be honest with you. So, and like I said, there's only 3 real corners. So that means you've got to maximise every metre of this racetrack to get it right. And if you don't maximise every metre of this track, you get penalised heavily because at longer tracks, if you make a small mistake at one corner, you can make it up through the rest of the lap. If you make a mistake here, you get exposed, and instead of qualifying in the top 2 rows, you might qualify in the 7th, 8th, 9th row, and then that makes your racing a lot harder. So you might have a fast car, you make one mistake in qualifying, and you're back in the pack, and you've got to make your way through.
Especially
everyone
this weekend.
knows that challenge coming here, so I think that's one of the cool things about it.
Let's quickly show people some curbs, because this might be something that a lot of people haven't had a chance to see much of. I think the curb down here at 7 is pretty much the same.
7, we don't touch the curb. You actually short shift 3rd to 4th just before you turn into turn 7.
It's actually a different curb to turn 6. That's more like a Velolonga style, and this is a grade on it.
Don't touch that one.
Okay.
And then you pull 5th just as you exit turn 7. Turn 7, the exit's really long. So turn around, turn the camera around, Chad.
I'm trying. There we go.
There we go.
Tap.
Okay. So you run the car out, you're running over the grid boxes here, and you run the car out nice and wide, and you can actually see on the edge of the circuit here, just over here, they've added some concrete.
Like about 20 centimetres of it.
They're very generous with what they've added for us. So
it's
they
tiny.
add just that. And to be honest, what they've added that for, we'll jump out and have a look.
And you'll use that?
Yeah, you run the car on that. Run the car on that, but the reason they put a concrete curb
She
there...
sounded a bit hot, the old Gator, Garth. You've cooked
I don't know if it's meant to be doing that.
Yeah, I know.
The reason they've added that bit of concrete is because the cars were dropping a wheel off here, and it was actually breaking the tarmac. So the concrete doesn't break. So you actually you do run the car through here. So have a look at how clean that concrete is. And we call that green. It's very green. There's not any rubber on the circuit at the moment. And by the end of second practice tomorrow, before qualifying, this will rubber up. So this will be pretty slippery in practice 1, be better in practice 2, and by the time you get to qualifying, this will be hooked up nicely. So you grab 5th gear just here, and generally watch the in-car footage. You'll see the driver will grab 5th gear, and then on the quick brake adjusters that they have now in the cars, it's usually at least 1 sweep, maybe 2 sweeps, depending on how much adjustment they have, before they get to the hump. You can see those guys starting their track walk up there. So it's a gear change, a quick brake adjustment, and then just as you get to the hump, exactly where those guys are standing in that yellow high vis is where you start braking for turn 1 over that hump.
All right, I love it. There you go. That is a track walk. The hair's blowing all around the place because the Gator was going
Chad,
flat out.
Your hair,
like
Chad,
that.
your
That's
hair.
great. That was really good fun. Excellent insight. I think the punters were loving that. We've had just about 1,000 people watching that the whole way around. So 2.4 Ks, but man, a lot goes into it. Check out the action this weekend. Garth, thank you. That was some mega insight.
No worries.
I think we should do more of this, actually. That was pretty good fun. If you liked it, let us know. And maybe we can bring it to you for the next one when we go to the Bend, which is a much
That'll take us a bit longer.
Much longer lap. Enjoy the show this weekend, guys. Cheers for joining us on that one. We'll catch you soon.
Yeah.